There's been a lot of noise coming from Twitter X recently about Lois Lane from My Adventures with Superman. Her recent actions in episode 5 are getting her compared to Amber from Invincible, and not in a good way. Criticisms range from the lover discovering the superhero secret identity trope being played out to anyone that thinks Amber is worse is a racist. There's always somebody on this app. So I went and caught up with the show and am now left wondering if these people even watched it, or perhaps they need serious help understanding media literacy. Lois and Amber aren't even close to the same tier of bad. In fact, I'd argue that Lois is pretty well written in this scene compared to Amber. That's why I'm making this video, to describe why Lois and Clark's confrontation works where Mark and Amber's does not. So every situation in a story has at least 3 sections. There's the build-up, the climax, and the denouement or the aftermath. I'm not a literary major, but I know that, and My Adventures with Superman performs every part of this process infinitely better than Invincible did for Mark and Amber. The build-up for Lois and Clark is layered throughout the show, but it really kickstarts in episode 4. In the beginning of that episode, Clark has reached a point where he's going to reveal his identity to Lois.
Actually, there's something I've been wanting to say. Something I need to tell you. Lois, And
it's all Superman's fault. I know that guy is hiding something, and I hate being lied to, you know? It's throwing me off. Ugh. Sorry, you were gonna say.
Nothing.
Obviously afraid of this, Clark pulls back and decides to redouble his efforts to hide who he is from her, which means he's going to have to keep lying. Later in that same episode, the two of them share a really intimate moment where Lois opens up about being estranged from her father due to him withholding secrets from her, including how sick her mother was at one point before she passed. As a result of this, she can't stand the people that she's close to keeping any big secrets from her, whether it's for her own good or not. Hint, hint. At the end of the episode, she figures out that Clark is Superman by piecing together some evidence. Lois then spends the entirety of episode 5 on attempts to get Clark to admit he's Superman, or vice versa, since she doesn't want to accuse him without being 100% certain first. All this comes to a head in their confrontation at the end of the episode.
Clark Kent is Superman?
Compare this to Amber's situation. In episode 6 of Invincible, Amber and Mark go to a college campus together. Mark makes statements about how he's going to do things differently between the two of them, as his superheroics have been making him pretty absent as a boyfriend. Well, the campus gets attacked, and during the chaos, Mark disappears, Invincible shows up to save the day, and then Mark reappears afterwards. Amber is understandably upset by this, basically shutting Mark off for the remainder of the day, but not before implying that he's a trash male.
Eve was wrong about you. So was I. Wait!
Note that during this period, Mark has told his best friend William that he is invincible, and the only thing William is upset about is that he wasn't told earlier. He gets over it relatively quickly. Meanwhile, Amber starts flirting with another guy the same night, and when asked if she was seeing someone, states that she isn't anymore. The next day, they all ride home in silence, and Mark decides that now's the time to confess as a last-ditch effort to save his relationship. Now, these setups are very different for each character. First off, we get a full view into Lois's thought processes and thus have a real understanding of why she's doing everything that she does. On Amber's side, we don't get to know what she's thinking. So everything we do know about the character is simply inferred, and it isn't a good look. Most importantly though, there is no build-up for what she says next. There's only build-up to justify her anger towards Mark, and this is key for the climax.
Lois?
Clark! I was so worried. You're hurt.
Oh, that's from shaving, but there's no need to be worried. I just went home for to water plants.
The next major difference between these two is how the narrative portrays the characters during their confrontation scenes. Lois's first action when Clark returns after a big battle he has is one of both worry and relief. This shows that Lois's first concern is that Clark is all right. Once she notices his fresh injuries, namely a long scar across his neck, she of course asks him how in the world he got it. And as bad liars do, Clark lies badly. And of course, Lois goes from worry to anger since she knows he's capping directly to her face. She calls Clark out for lying and he denies it repeatedly. So to force his hand, she jumps off the side of the Daily Planet. This is nuts, but apparently Lois does this in every incarnation. I guess it's just a Lois Lane thing. Moving past the absurdity of that action, her reason for doing so is at least logically consistent. And it works, because by doing so, Clark is forced to reveal that he is Superman, which leads to the next part of their fight. I think this is the most important part, to be honest. Lois and Clark have a back and forth here. Let me repeat, it is a back and forth. Lois is upset that she's been lied to about the secret identity, which was established in the previous episode. Clark fires back that Lois had been nothing but giddy about exposing Superman's secrets to the world, so it's not like it was safe for him to tell her. And Lois has no comeback here, other than she wouldn't have done it if she knew it had been him, which isn't a very good reason. The two of them go their separate ways, with Lois saying that whatever had been budding between them is now done. Going to Invincible, when Mark attempts to reveal his identity to Amber in that last-ditch effort that he talked about before, she slams the door in his face. Mark then flies to her window to reveal his identity forcefully, and Amber's only reply is with a disinterested,
I know you're a superhero.
You know?
This of course leaves Mark confused because if she knew, why was she taking it so hard that she hadn't been around? Remember, even his best friend, who he's known for way longer than her, got over it relatively quickly. In fact, in the same day. This is when Amber states she's just mad that Mark lied to her about it and didn't trust her, so she tells him to keep it pushing. So, Lois is upset because Clark is actively lying to her while she is confronting him with the fact that he is lying, about his injuries at least. Of course, Clark is blindsided here since he has no way of knowing that Lois figured out his secret, so he plays dumb. Lois initiating the conversation after everything we've seen so far plays in her favor as she's taking active steps to move their relationship forward in some way, whether it is for the negative or the positive. Jumping off the building is a wild way to force somebody's hand, but I'll chalk that up to cartoon logic. Meanwhile, Amber is completely ruined in her climactic scene. I think the main reason everyone hates Amber at this point is the whiplash from understanding why she was moving on from Mark to complete confusion about those same actions a few minutes later. Unlike real life, everything in a story needs to make some kind of logical sense. That's why the truth is stranger than fiction is a saying. I can totally see real teens acting like Amber did here due to their emotional immaturity, but in a story, it just doesn't work. Worst of all is the epilogue. Amber is considered in the right for her decision by the narrative. No one challenges her thought process evenly, not even Mark, since he's just left stunned in the moment and sulking afterwards.
So this is why I've hardly seen you the last 6 months. Because you're a superhero.
Not anymore.
What? Why?
Because I'm a terrible friend and a worse boyfriend. Because I'm gonna fail my last year of high school. Because I got everything I ever wanted and I messed it all up.
Stop. Enough with the sulking, you big baby.
What?
You can fly. You're invulnerable. Your dad's the greatest superhero on Earth, and your mom loves and cares about you. You just need to study and you can pull up your grades. But you were a terrible boyfriend to Amber, and you got what you deserved. Sorry, not sorry.
The way Amber not only immediately starts talking to another guy when they're on campus, but also indifferently sending Mark on his way after he reveals his identity, there seems to be no way the two would get back together, which is why them getting back together in the end is such bull. Lois and Clark have a very emotional ending. Strangely enough, this means that they can, meaning will, get back together after an episode or two. In fact, I'm betting their relationship will end up stronger than ever since Clark has no need to lie to her anymore. They've been left in the perfect position for character growth. If this does not happen, feel free to mark everything in this video incorrect. The writers are just terrible. And that is why Lois is not nearly as bad as Amber. Yet.